But I'll also be sending that in the email that we send out. And as an incentive to complete the survey, anyone who completes the survey will be in our prize drawing, and 2 lucky winners will each win a zero waste kit so that you can start your zero waste lifestyle right away. So enough of me talking and enough with issues. Let's get to our panel. I'm so pleased to introduce our moderator, Sarah Spitz. For 28 years, Sarah Spitz was a producer and publicity director for KCRW Public Radio, as well as a freelance arts producer for NPR. In 2020, she wrapped up an 8-year stint writing a weekly arts and culture column for the Santa Monica Daily Press. In 2006, she became a University of California Master Gardener for Los Angeles County and was certified in 2011 as a UC Master Food Preserver. She is currently a member of the Kitchen Cabinet Advisory Board for Food Forward, a nonprofit organization that prevents food waste by rescuing surplus produce to feed those in need in 8 Southern California counties. In the past 11 years, more than 220 million pounds have been recovered and shared with more than 2 million recipients through a network of 180 partner agencies. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi. I think, am I on mute or no? Unmute, here we go. No matter how many times you do Zoom, you still have to relearn it every time. Let's introduce the panelists, the people who are much more important than this moderator here, and that is Dianna Cohen. Dianna Cohen is the co-founder and CEO of the Plastic Pollution Coalition and a passionate advocate against plastic pollution. A Los Angeles-based visual artist, Dianna has shown her work internationally at galleries, foundations, and museums. With plastic bags as her primary material for the past 27 years, Cohen is interested in exploring its materiality through modifications and the material's relationship to culture, media, toxicity, and the world at large. She shared this in her 2010 TED Talk, Tough Truths About Plastic Pollution. Dianna is a frequent speaker and guest and has spoken at the UN and international conferences and symposia. She's been interviewed by Al Jazeera, NBC Nightly News, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, USA Today, and many others. She's a recipient of the Global Green Environment Award, the Snow Angel Award, and Environmentalist of the Year by SEMA, among others. Chris Celsi was hired as City of Santa Monica's Resource Recovery and Recycling Manager in January 2018. Prior to coming to Santa Monica, he was the Department of Waste Management and Recycling's superintendent for the County of Sacramento. Chris was responsible for the collection of trash, recycling, and green waste for more than 150,000 residential households in Sacramento County. Chris started his career by driving a garbage truck while attending Loyola Marymount University, earning a degree in business administration. Chris has more than 30 years in the garbage and recycling industry, with the last 17 years in the public sector. He is married with 3 grown children. Paige Schult is an entrepreneur with a background in digital strategy and consumer insights. Currently, Paige spends her time challenging throwaway culture as a co-founder and CEO of Topanga.io, a company building infrastructure for the circular economy. Her free time is filled with hiking and backpacking, supporting her mission to preserve public lands. I want to start with Dianna. Dianna, I gotta say, I mean, now that I've seen it twice, unmute yourself. Everybody that's on the panel, please unmute yourselves right now. This is a devastating movie. It's, you know, David versus Goliath. What was the idea behind highlighting individual problem solvers as the film has done? Is it a statement about how little governments and industries worldwide are doing at a bigger, higher level?
Yeah, well, I'm going to try and represent what I believe the filmmakers, the director, and the producers had in mind when they began making the project, and that was, how do we tell a more complete story so that people really understand that plastic is made from petroleum and from the petrochemical industry, chemicals that also come from the petrochemical industry, like phthalates and bisphenols and flame retardants, all these different chemicals that are used and added to the carbon source when we make plastic, and to tell a bigger a bigger story that would really give people the knowledge and the information that looking at the whole life cycle, right? So, and also thinking about how to tell a macro story, but also come into micro stories within it and talk with activists and colleagues of all of ours who are working on the front line or fence line, living across the street from ExxonMobil, dealing with this is in their backyard. And what it really feels like firsthand. And my only regret about the film, which I have now seen more than 10 times, is that there's no smell-o-vision. Like, that is literally my only regret, because I had the opportunity about 4 years ago to visit the Gulf Coast in Houston, Texas, where we go with Yvette Ariano in the film. And the smell is a kind of very, very sweet, but dangerous smell. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like when I try and remember and imagine the smell of the 68 miles of petrochemical build out all along the Gulf Coast in Houston, I imagine it and I feel it right here, and then it comes down into my chest and I feel it in the top of my stomach. And it's very sweet and kind of sickly smell, a chemical smell. There are a lot of different things burning, flares, burning things off. And our colleagues and some of the people featured in the film that I've sat down and spoken with and worked with and talked to are contending with an incredible amount of health issues, from, fertility issues to different kinds of cancer and asthma and respiratory issues. And they also find themselves in situations where they have to lock in place and put towels around all their windows and doors. And it's almost unimaginable to me, except I've been to visit and now I know that it exists, and it's all around us. It's in Los Angeles here where I live as well. And, just a few miles south of where I live. It's in Long Beach for folks who live in Long Beach. It's all around us, and some of it's really hidden in plain sight. If you ever drive over La Brea or La Cienega to get to, LAX from mid-city Los Angeles, you're driving through oil fields. And, what is the impact of that on the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and our communities? So, sorry, I kind of went off topic, but, there's a real power in this film to put human faces on the story. So
it is devastating. I mean, God, one thing I noticed, when we're talking about toxic smoke, incinerating plants and so on, there are waste processing plants that are converting waste into energy all across the world. I was in Copenhagen and I saw Copenhagen, where they are doing this with trash, the regenerating energy, and they've got even a ski slope over the top of it. But is this a viable solution in the use of plastics? I mean, aside from just incinerating them, is there any technology that could capture the toxins, the smoke, and turn it into energy? Is this even a viable solution?
I mean, I'm a visual artist. I'm not a scientist, but our scientific advisors and groups that are part of our coalition and that we collaborate with, like Gaia, the Global Alliance for Incineration Alternatives, they have not seen any waste to energy or waste to fuel incineration type of plants. They have all these, euphemistic names like pyrolysis and everything. They have not seen one that does not release dioxins, particulate pollution, and create this kind of toxic ash. So we really haven't seen something. It sounds like a dream and we just burn it up. But that, from what I've learned so far, and I learn new things every day, I don't think that that's a viable solution. That doesn't make it okay to produce more of this stuff, which is really what's happening. And so far during COVID, I think that, use of plastic went up 250%. So, and we are surrounded by it in the neighborhood where I live. I see it on the ground, in the gutter, everywhere. and it almost seems like nobody cares anymore. And then, certain companies seem to just take pride in how well they brand all the packaging that they're delivering their products to us in. So I had an experience a few days ago across the street from a Starbucks where I looked down and the entire gutter for like about 30 feet was full of plastic Starbucks branded garbage, basically in the street, and metallic looking Christmas straws and their holiday cups. And I mean, it's just, and who's responsible for that? And so we really need laws and policy that hold producers responsible, not even extended producer responsibility, which we talk about EPR, but we need producer responsibility. And then they need to be held responsible. I think that if companies were responsible for all of the packaging that they use to deliver their products, we would see a pretty quick change.
I mean, it almost feels insurmountable to make these companies do that. I see that in the film, some of them are, well, there's that alliance to, whatever that was called. I've already
Called the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. It was created by Dow.
And it seems very greenwashy to me, if you'll pardon my saying so. But these feel like insurmountable odds. How do we actually bring them to account, make them take these actions? What do we do?
Well, I mean, I think we pass policies and legislation, and then it comes to, the devil's in the details. How are those things enforced? How are those laws enforced? But I mean, it's a pretty exciting time right now. We're watching laws come into place around the world, and we are looking at the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which was reintroduced earlier this year by Merkley and Lowenthal, and it's very comprehensive, and it looks at everything. It looks at not just trying to reboot, a somewhat broken recycling infrastructure system, but it also has money to support bringing back bottle bills. And I grew up with mainly glass bottles and a milkman delivery system here in Hollywood. And I'd like to see that come back again, where we value these containers and where at the local level we sterilize them and refill them if we're able to do that, because the glass is non-reactive and it's not potentially leaching endocrine disrupting chemicals into our food and beverage. So that's what I'd like to see, and the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act has that within it. It also supports phasing out single-use plastics for, cutlery, cups, bottles, utensils, plates, all these different things that just, I think the thing that you realize, and they included some of it in the beginning of the film, but I've also seen it in other documentaries about this, that plastic really came on the scene at the end of World War II, and it was rebooting machinery that had been used for the war effort, and then industry and the petrochemical industry and the government trying to figure out how to reboot these things and make things that would be helpful to the public or that they could sell to the public. So, and it was all marketed to us with the idea that it was going to make our lives easier, and it was marketed to us as convenient. But I think that it's not actually convenient if you look at all of the true costs that have been externalized to our health, the health of future generations, our children, our children's health, the health of our beaches and our communities and our nature, the health of our air and our water. It's very, very, this is a very, very expensive material that has been presented to us as a convenience that we simply can't live without. But the truth is, I mean, I'm a proud former resident of Santa Monica for 15 years. And, this to me seems like a no-brainer for Santa Monica to take on. It would be so great.
Speaking of no-brainers, not that Chris is one, but I want to jump over to Chris. I have to admit to being baffled about what does and doesn't go into the recycle bin anymore. What is Santa Monica doing to get plastics recycled and processed in our city? What specific plastics is the city taking in?
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. This is pretty exciting. And, that is probably one of the hardest things that we struggle with, and not just in Santa Monica, but everywhere, that I've worked or have been, it's the plastic issue and, what's recyclable, what's not recyclable. What do the processors want? What do they want? What they don't want? But the cities, what they've done is they've reached out to these haulers and these companies and said, hey, we want a comprehensive recycling program. So these haulers have come in and said, okay, well, we'll recycle everything. We'll take everything. And when it's happened is, the cities end up forgetting about that, or not forgetting, but they just said, hey, look, it's not our issue anymore. It's the hauler's issue to take on, these plastic issues. And so, for Santa Monica, we used to take 1 through 7. I think I sent you an email this morning that we used to take 1 through 7, which is basically all the plastics that are being generated. And, but we're told by our processors that, hey, look, from 3, 4, and 6, and 7, we can't process it. We can't take it. It's just going to get dumped. So right now we take 1, 5, and 7, and 1 is our soft drink bottles. Number 1, it's a PET soft drink bottles and water bottles. Number 2 is HDPE, which are the milk jugs, the shampoo bottles, the detergent bottles, and then 5, which is polypropylene, which is basically toys and bumpers on cars, that sort of thing. But we got grocery stores and giving out, or charging us a dime or whatever in reusable bags. And, a lot of people have said, hey, how do I recycle this? And there's quite a few processors that won't recycle those bags because it gums up their machinery, and it ends up being costing them more than what they can get out of it. And, to kind of, just to back up what Dianna said, I really think, when she says, how do we get out of this kind of a mess? I think it just starts with us, me, you, everybody here, and we just make the decision to change our ways. We can bring a whole bunch of laws in place and say, hey, this is what you have to do. This is what you're going to do. But unless you enforce those laws, it really doesn't really mean that much. So I think it's just a decision that we have to make personally and say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to use this plastic anymore. I'm going to use bottles. I'm going to buy, milk in a bottle if you can find it in a bottle. And that's tough to do. But I mean, those are the decisions. Go to farmers market and bring your bag to farmers market and buy that material, or buy the goods that they're selling. So anyway, I'm kind of digressing and jumping all over the place, but right now we take 1, 5, and 7, or 1, 5, 1, 2, and 5, and the others get thrown out. And what the concern is that if you throw away the 3, 4, 6s, and 7s in the container, it might contaminate the material that is already in there that could get recycled. And I think that's a big concern of our processors as well, is that, hey, we'll be more than happy to recycle the yogurt cups, but they have to be clean. Otherwise, it gets into the other material, it gets onto the paper, the fiber, and then it becomes contaminated. And it's very frustrating because people want easy, they want something to do easy. Hey, I don't want to think about it. I just want to throw it away, or I just want to put it in my recycle, and it gets taken care of. And exactly. I think a lot of haulers have come in and said, yeah, just put it in our container and we'll take care of it from there. And, they'll charge you X amount of dollars to do this, and they'll take all the risk. They'll take, but they put enough of that money, or they put enough in that price or that cost for them to make it worth their while to pick up everything and sort it out.
So this might be a question that you've kind of addressed here. Is there any effort to set up a standardized system for recycling that would make it that all cities could use, that would make it easier for all of us as consumers to do the right thing?
And that's a great idea. I think the problem becomes is that how do you agree on what will be that standard? I know that there's a huge challenge right now, and even with Cal Recycle, they're trying to standardize things and standardize how to say certain things and what's recyclable, what's not recyclable. The problem is you have a very strong lobby that will fight you on this, and it's the oil industry that will they don't want us to say, hey, let's not do this anymore. They have, you don't want to buy our fuel, that's fine, but we'll sell it to you in another way, and I think to me, the biggest challenge will be is getting everybody to agree, okay, these are the standards here. And, and maybe you might have a city that comes out and says, well, we can recycle, styrofoam. So we're going to do that. And they end up doing it. And then the neighboring city goes, well, why aren't we doing this? And so it gets quite confusing sometimes.
It's heartbreaking, it just is. Let's talk for very briefly, if you don't mind, about biodegradable, bioplastics, compostable utensils, etc. I mean, I've been using bio bags in my compost cube for the food scraps and putting that in the green bin. And I just read in the city's instructions about organic waste. You can't do that anymore. You can't use these so-called compostable bio bags in the green. That just blew me away.
Well, I think part of the deal with the biodegradables is that, with the processors that we use, they like to turn that material over quick, meaning that they don't have an extended period of time to allow it to decompose. And a lot of those places, or a lot of the bioplastics and the biodegradable, they will over a period of time. What period of time? It's a longer period of time than what most of these processors, they want to flip that material over in 90 days, and so that they can get it to a product and get it out of there. If you had a backyard composting facility, then yeah, you probably could put that material in there and you could wait for it to break down. So we like compostables for BPI certified, ASTM D64 certified, which is it seemed to be acceptable to many of our recycling facilities or our processors. Bamboo and the other sturdy compostable plastic cutlery plates, bowls are sometimes problematic because they're very sturdy, and so it takes them a little bit of time for them to break down. So there are some alternatives to having a little bit less of the material, meaning that it's a little bit more frail, but there's always a trade-off. Well, I can only use this 4 times instead of using it 10 times, or something like that. So it gets to be a very, what I think a lot of it comes down to is a financial investment. Do I want to buy what I should buy and pay a little bit more money for that, or can I buy something that's going to last me a little bit longer, but it has a little bit more of the plastics, and that really kind of changes at least our processing.
There's an important question I'm going to get to, but I feel like I want to bring Paige into the conversation. She's sitting there patiently. You came up, Paige, with a local solution that features circularity. Can you briefly describe your origin story, which I found fascinating?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love listening to the conversation, but I'm excited because truthfully, when I first saw this movie, it was really what inspired me to start pursuing how to fix the problem both personally and professionally. So it's great to be speaking with everyone who's been watching it. So yeah, just to reiterate, Topanga.io, what we do is our goal is to help local restaurants in Santa Monica and LA area create systems that offer consumers reusable packaging. And this business was really born from this idea of, how can we understand the actions that a person can actually take as an individual on every day to make a difference? Like Chris was noted, it really starts with us. So how do we create a system where we can make a difference? And I think at the start of COVID, all my waste that had previously been kind of spread around the city at my office or at the park was really piling up in the house right in front of me. And I noticed that a lot of that was really food and beverage packaging. You know, it was the plastic hummus container or the plastic salad bag container or takeout containers and stuff that, as we've all learned tonight, you know, you use it for maybe 12, 20 minutes, and then it pretty much goes to the landfill or ends up in our natural environments. And so my co-founders and I started thinking, you know, what if we could design a system that eliminated this unnecessary waste from our daily lives? You know, as Dianna was saying, it's not just about managing it once we have it, but how do we make less and use less to begin with? And so actually we started as a milkman style grocery store. So we were working with local suppliers that you might find at the regional farmers markets. We received their products, packaged them in reusable glass containers, delivered them to your doorstep, and picked up the empties to have to be sanitized, washed, and reused. And yeah, it was so exciting because people were participating and suppliers were so excited to have an opportunity to partake in a system that used less waste. You know, everybody wants to be sustainable, but it's how do you make it accessible? And throughout kind of building this milkman grocery store, there really were a lot of hurdles that we had to jump through to really make the business profitable and make sure it was applied with, you know, local regulations and all of this. And so we started thinking, you know, yes, it's great that we can offer this, but what if we could work with other businesses and really broaden our reach to the greater LA area to make sure everyone could partake in reuse? And so, yeah, that's the origin story. And that's kind of our angle in trying to help solve this, is powering reuse.
Can this type of system work for any business, or is it sort of, so to speak, hard goods only?
Yeah, great question. I would say, you know, today we're really focused on food and beverage. And the reason being that, you know, a lot of our single-use packaging that is kind of most tangible and most accessible is from these products. But ultimately, there's opportunity for circularity everywhere you look in all types of businesses. And, you know, again, as Chris and Dianna were noting, there's a lot of legislation in place right now that's both in California and nationally is trying to help make sure that the laws are there to allow these creators and producers and consumers to continue to push this forward.
I want to open this up to all three of you because we're running a little short on the Q&A time for me because we want to bring the audience in as well. But there's two really important questions. Truth in Labeling Recycling Bill SB 343. What do any of you want to jump in? Feel free. What impact do you think it'll have on recycling in California?
Yeah, I mean, personally, my opinion on it is, I think what's really great, and again, as we've been discussing, is it will help raise awareness to people who may not have seen this movie or may not be in the weeds that recycling does have its downfalls, and, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle should be in that order. Recycling should be a last resort, and we should understand what materials can be most effectively recycled. So that's kind of why I'm excited about it.
How about Chris or Dianna? Do you want to respond?
Well, Chris, did you want to speak to that bill?
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add actually that the reduce, reuse, recycle 3R model was created by industry. So that said, you know, the model we use at Plastic Pollution Coalition is 4Rs. We say, first, refuse, whenever possible, refuse single-use plastic. You know, look for alternatives, bring your own containers, etc. You can actually save money. I always carry my own reusable cup with me, and it's pretty handy, especially if you're driving up and down the 5 to the Bay Area. I've saved like $1 every time I stop at AM, PM Mini Mart and fill up a drink. So just that's an FYI, and a lot of coffee places also give you a discount if you come in with your own cup. Obviously, you want it to be clean when you come in, and they wouldn't take them for a little while during COVID, but they are now. The bill that you specifically asked about had to do with labeling though, right?
Yeah.
Sarah.
Yes.
So there are two bills that passed and were signed into law for California. One was about using the recycling symbol. So you will not be able to put the recycling symbol on containers, which are types of plastic that are not actually recycled. And currently in California, well, you already spoke about this, Chris, but we're not recycling that many types of plastic. And just for everybody's edification, number 7 is other. So it's all the other kinds. It's super confusing. And at this moment in time, actually, a lot of bioplastics are also kind of misrepresented in that they contain a whole batch. It's important to know, as Chris mentioned earlier, that plastic bags don't really get recycled. Plastic straws never get recycled. There are certain shapes and sizes that just gum up machinery and are not recyclable, actually. So the whole kind of idea of recycling is something that's really been, again, marketed to us by industry. It's where industry and the petrochemical industry and the plastic industry go every time there's any kind of problem. They just shift all the focus back on, well, you just need to recycle better, give a hoot, don't pollute, and don't be a litter bug. But I mean, really, at this point, while I do think that individual action and our own determination is really important and we can move mountains with that, I also don't want this to be the responsibility of my children or my grandchildren. And I'm pretty angry actually about that. And so yeah, exactly. Whoever in the chats just said the source is the problem. Yeah, it's the source. So when we go back upstream, instead of just looking at the downstream solutions of how we manage this stuff and it's all waste, I think we need to look at it in some of the ways that they talk about at the end of the film with zero waste cities. We need to look at all of these materials as, valuable materials. And if we treat them as valuable materials, then how do we either reuse them or how do we care for them in a way so that they can be reused again? And, I always think that reuse and refill is 1,000 times better and more efficient and more effective than breaking things apart, needing to transport them, shred them, mash them up, melt them, heat them, and reform them. So that's really important too. And to the other bill, that was just signed into law as well, they're not going to be able to put compostable on products, packaging that are not actually compostable. So we just basically passed a whole suite of laws and 2 other laws about getting PFAS chemicals, which are forever chemicals, out of baby products and out of food packaging. So there's a lot of exciting movement. I feel like California at this point is really going to be a leader in the nation in terms of this type of policy and legislation, which is exciting. But again, having lived in Santa Monica, I really look to Santa Monica to be even a bigger leader than the rest. So I'm hoping that we come up with some really good stuff. I see Sheila making comments. Sheila, I love buying things in bulk bins. I'm a huge fan of the farmers markets, both the Wednesday and the Saturday in Santa Monica and the Hollywood Farmers Market and Sunday. I know where they all are. If I'm cooking, I go to those. I'm like a little Red Riding Hood with my baskets and my bags. And it also allows you to actually have relationships with and friendships with the farmers and people who grow your food, which is pretty neat as well.
I'm going to jump in just because we do want to give our audience a chance to answer questions. These are not specific to anybody, so whoever would like to answer them, please feel free. If we can make our answers short, that would be great so that we could get to more questions because there's about 50 questions. I don't know. I don't know how many we'll get to, but the first question comes from Deborah Myers. How can we best encourage our politicians to end taxpayer-funded fossil fuel subsidies? Take it away, who would ever like to.
Throttle them.
Yeah, apply pressure. I mean, I've been watching youth ambassadors and youth leaders that we work with for the last 2 weeks at TED Countdown in Edinburgh and COP26, really putting the pressure on and making that strong connection between petroleum, petrochemical industry, fracking, plastic, our health. And as we watch big institutions, like big university institutions, move away from and divest from fossil fuels and fossil fuel investments, I think that kind of pressure is going to help move us along. But we also have to, if we're in a privileged enough position to be able to afford some things that sometimes are a little more expensive in the beginning, we need to support these programs and businesses like Paige's business that are working to scale up and provide bulk and plastic-free options. And I think the more we can help support plastic-free aisles in markets, et cetera, buy things from bulk and talk with the vendors and companies that we go to for our foods, the more that we can shift the system. Sorry, that wasn't a short answer, Gina.
That's okay. So this next one's from Christopher McGee. I'm going to read it, but I think it was sort of answered with the legislation that we were talking about. But how far away are we in the US from having producers in a way that is legally enforceable stop creating plastics that cannot be effectively recycled? And you, Dianna, were saying that these laws that passed are labeling, so you can't label something if it can't truly be recycled. Is that correct?
That's correct. But that's for the state of California. Now, there is legislation that there is verbiage like this included in the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which is a federal act, and you guys can look it up really easily. It's very easy to find, or maybe
It was one of the action items that we have that we're going to share with people, so we'll have the direct link to that. Ann Bauman asks, can Santa Monica ban plastic takeout containers at every restaurant? ? I thought Santa Monica had, but sometimes when we order takeout, we still get plastic so bad.
I can speak to this one a little bit. I mean, I think there has been a lot of success historically in Santa Monica and kind of pushing towards these more progressive actions against plastic. I will say, as I'm sure we all can understand, is COVID was a setback. You know, there has been some regulation ensuring that takeout containers in Santa Monica were marine degradable and safer and better than traditional petroleum-based plastics. Unfortunately, that was paused during COVID, but that is making a comeback. And I think, again, on top of that, really our goal as a company is to make sure that these businesses have an affordable option and that consumers have an affordable option to choose an alternative. And as Dianna was saying, some restaurants will let you bring your own reusable container. So call ahead, see what you can do. There are workarounds, and the more times you call and say, can I do this? Can I do this? The more times businesses will start to realize that their customers want it, so they'll make it happen.
And I'm going to add on to that with yes, Santa Monica had a very strong takeout law. The only thing that was not in it was lids, because they couldn't find a viable lid that was marine degradable. Marine degradable means it has to degrade in the ocean environment. And because of health concern with COVID, a lot of restaurants that were using marine degradable had moved to plastic. The issue they're having now is, and the city is, their goal is to bring that all back, is with the, as we all are with the products sitting out in the ocean, the supply chain, that a lot of the companies now can't even get those marine degradable products. They're not available, or they're stuck on a ship somewhere. So there are a lot of struggles, but the city does have a real strong goal to have all to go where be marine degradable. And first, they encourage reuse whenever you can in restaurants, to use real dishes, plates, and stuff, but also to not have plastic to go where. Let's see. This may be for you, Chris, from Mary Saber. Culver City mobile recycle locations. When will we have them in Santa Monica? I'm not even really sure what a mobile recycle location is, but are you all familiar with it, Chris?
Yeah, so about a year ago, you know, as most of you know, or more than a year ago, 2 years ago, we closed our recycling center because we're redoing the city yards. We're getting in earthquake approved and all that kind of stuff, and we're rebuilding it. And we didn't have any space for the recycling anymore. So one of the things that Cal Recycle had put out was that they had allowed us to put a mobile center. You know, we could find where it show up, you know, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or somewhere, so people can still bring their material, you know, their redeemable bottles and cans, so they can get paid for the material. However, Cal Recycle came back and said, because Culver City has one, we didn't have one. They felt that it was close enough. People in Santa Monica live close enough to Culver City that they could drive over there and redeem their bottles and cans. So they basically turned down our application because Culver City already had one. So it doesn't look like we'll ever get anything back anytime soon unless they allow us to do that. They said that there was plenty of opportunity for anybody to go over to Culver City if they wanted it.
would Santa Monica residents writing to Cal Recycles and letting them know that that's not a viable option help?
Yeah,
We
that,
want
I
to
mean,
make this as easy as possible for people, and that's not really easy.
yeah, I think so, because I think, you know, I don't think they're taking into consideration the people that are living this, you know, a clean lifestyle, meaning they're riding their bikes, they're walking to work, they're not driving, they're, you know, doing that sort of thing. And you can't expect somebody to ride a bike 8 miles to go, you know, redeem their bottles and cans.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know about that. That's great information. Okay, from Robin Steichler, sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. Why do we seem only to hear about curtailing fossil fuel from energy and transportation in terms of climate change? But I've never heard about plastic incineration before this film. No wonder no plan to stop all extraction / new pipelines. Does anyone who wants to take that?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I just was trying to answer a question for someone.
Okay, why do we seem to only hear about, basically what she's saying is we hear about curtailing fossil fuels and for transportation, but never about what's doing with plastics, incineration and the fossil fuels we're using in plastic before this film. So why don't we hear more about it as a plastic?
Well, there are a bunch of reasons that we don't hear about it as much as we should. One is that one of the things we just saw, a bunch of articles that came out of COP26 were that although there were a bunch of activists there were over 500 representatives of the petrochemical industry. So, you know, and the marine debris conferences that I participated in, the American Chemistry Council and Coca-Cola are the 2 top corporate sponsors of those conferences. So as long as the sponsors and the people who are funding things or have the most lobbyists or have the most money are controlling the conversation, you're not going to hear, you know, the information. That said, I think that, again, these youth leaders at COP did a great job. They demonstrated the entire time they were there. They did a great job making the connection between, you know, what's happening with the climate crisis, fossil fuels, you know, pipelines. I just really saw that connection with water keepers. We're all in the same, we're all being challenged by the same thing. We're being challenged by a small group of companies and people who control the energy on the planet that we live on. So, you know, the question is, as we educate ourselves, what is it that we're able to shift and move? And I think there's a lot of really positive, really good stuff happening with zero waste models, again, bulk bins and reusable, refillable models. And I think we all need to do the best we can to support that and to support policy and legislation around that.
Yeah. We actually have 2 reusable refill stores in Santa Monica, one by me on Ocean Park and one on Montana, if anyone's interested in going there. So Cecilia Valentine, I think this is probably for you, Paige. I heard of cities where reusable takeout containers are available for a small amount, like 80 cents, and are collected, sterilized, and reused. Can we do that in LA County? Make it mandatory, at least an option. I would do it 100% of the time, or make restaurants allow us to bring our own.
Yeah, great question. So, you know, just to preface this with, we're just getting started. So I'm really excited to have you all hopefully participate in the system that we're trying to create throughout 2022. And to answer that more directly, it's definitely possible. You know, we have run the numbers, we've spoken with restaurants, we've spoken with consumers. And the thing about sustainability is it's also economically viable. So there is a lot of reasons to push this forward, regardless of who you speak to, except for these giant, old, long-standing corporations who have stake in the game to not change the system. So what we are starting out with is it would be $2 a month for consumers to access as many reusable containers as they would like from as many participating businesses as they choose to go to. Our goal is, of course, as we scale, to make that more accessible, to ensure that we have restaurants in all neighborhoods throughout LA, at grocery stores and all of that. But to answer in a word, yes, it is possible. It just proving it out.
Thank you, Paige. And she did add, and do you have a promo sheet you can use to promote the idea? We'll link to their website on the information I send out, so you guys can contact them and get more information. This Marie Berto, I can't pronounce your last name. This is for you, Chris, probably. She says, I live in the city of LA. Sometimes I am unsure about whether something is recyclable. Is it okay to be over-inclusive when recycling plastic materials, or does it actually hurt the system?
That's a great question. I've always been taught, when in doubt, throw it out, but then look and find out. Find out whether it is. And so I would, and that comes from a nationally recognized person, and she would say, hey, when in doubt, throw it out. And so that's what I would probably do at first, and then find out if it is recyclable or not. Because if it isn't recyclable and you can possibly contaminate the rest of the other material. Maybe not a lot of the material, but you still would contaminate more than what you expected to do.
And on that, adding on, Sheila Laffey asks, can we recycle cartons like almond milk, or for example, I heard there is plastic lining in them. Those are the things with like multi-foil and plastic and paper, those recyclable?
And about 2 or 3 years ago, they were recyclable. And I can get back to her, because it's always a market. Like this month they are, and next month they aren't. And because it's like a film of paper, and then we've got plastic, and then another film of paper, and some of the places they will say yes, we take it, and then other places will say no, we have no market for it, we're not taking it. Right. But I can get back to her on that.
Okay, and as you were saying, you and I had a conversation, you were saying it's challenging because you don't want to say these things aren't recyclable, because like you're just saying, in a few months, they may be recyclable, and people get in the habit of not putting it in, and then they become recyclable. It's all based on the market, who's going to actually buy this and use it and make money from it, correct?
Yeah, quite a bit. And in order for it to be recycled as well. I mean, some of those, like it was stated earlier, that some of them is just not being recycled. It's just, there's no way to do recycle it, even though they claim it's recyclable.
Dianna, look, I thought you
it's cost prohibitive to recycle Tetra Pak stuff. I mean, for the most part, it's not really recycled. I've seen people say that they make something out of it or they do something with it, but
right.
Yeah. And I think, all of us probably put more than we should in our recycling bins if we're lucky enough to live in part of the city where we have recycling bins, and we call it wish cycling.
Yeah, the idea is to eliminate that blue bin as much as you can.
But I mean, in all fairness for Sheila too, I mean, I'm drinking almond milk right now out of a Tetra Pak box, but I know that it's coated with a plastic coating that's made with BPA, and I know that that's bad for my health. So it's like, where do you approach this from? I mean, this is also a health issue before it becomes a material management issue.
Mario Ortiz, serious question here. He starts out with the amount of money and profit involved with plastics and corporations funding politicians in Congress, how realistic is it to hope that laws will make the immediate change we need? Anybody want to take that one?
It's tricky. It's tricky.
Money talks, baby. Money talks. That's the problem.
Okay, Ronald Martin, has anyone proposed a fee for the plastic products high enough to cover recycling costs? However, I think in the film they were putting in the country, they're putting their black plastic bottles and getting money back. But however high this may be, this will eliminate the question of whether the recycled plastic has enough demand and selling price to recycle it. The fee recycled plastic could be given to any company that wants to use it, or lumber could be made from plastic and sold for building materials. Anybody?
I mean, when plastic's made into lumber and benches and these kind of downcycled into patio furniture and stuff like that, I don't know how long of a lifespan it has. A lot of it cracks and breaks apart and releases microplastics. So there are lots of things that I think were created with good intention, believing that that was a good solution. And ultimately we're seeing they're probably not.
Right, because what do you do with that bench once it degrades? It goes into the landfill. I mean, I guess it prevents you from taking new resources and just throwing that original plastic into the waste stream, but it's not the solution.
I mean, it's not taking into account that these things all off gas. It's really not looking, we're really, really not looking at the human health impact of this material yet.
Yeah, one thing I would just add there, furthering Deanna's point, is, there are a lot of companies who, rather than look to the source, they're saying, okay, rather than use virgin plastic, I'll start to use recycled plastic. And now even these companies who are making these promises, there's not enough recycled plastic to go around, and it still usually has inputs of virgin plastic. So even when it's recycled, there's still a but there, making it not the perfect solution.
And before I take it back to Sarah for the last couple questions, I just want to say Joselli Spilarcha says, I think the only problem of plastic is that the world got comfortable with the plastic kind of convenience. And it's true. It's like we just take it so for granted. It's in our lives every day. We just use it without. And I think that habits are so hard to change, and we're so used to this. But I think, like Topanga.io and other companies, we just have to change our habits. We have to look every day at what we use, every single item, and see how much is plastic, and not all at once, but slowly start eliminating plastic from your life. And if we're not using it anymore, companies can't sell it anymore and can't make money. So on that comment, I will turn it back to Sarah for one or two final questions for the panel.
Gina, you mentioned earlier in the action items, brand audits, and I wanted to ask Dianna, I wanted to ask all of you, how do they work? What's their impact, and how can we help?
Yeah, so brand audits are the idea of when you do a beach cleanup or a neighborhood cleanup or a park cleanup, you not only take a look at the materials that you find and count them up the way that we have for many years, like X amount of cigarette butts, X amount of plastic bottles, etc. But you actually look for brand names printed or on the labels or on the bottle caps, etc., on the utensils. And if you're able to decipher those, you document them as well and count those up. And we've been doing that for 4 years now, and added it and encouraged people to add it to cleanups. We've been doing it with the Break Free from Plastic movement that we helped create. And what we're finding, well, the results are on breakfreefromplastic.org if anybody's interested in looking up the brand audits to see what the results were. But for the last 4 years in a row, the #1 top corporate polluter globally is Coca-Cola, wow, which may just mean that they brand their products and their containers really, really well.
Well, I'm sorry.
I just think one quick thing to add there on the brand audits is, there on some food labeling that has been found in these cleanups, it's dating back to the 70s and the 80s, just further reiterating that this stuff sticks around forever.
Yeah, to what Paige just said, we found Yoplait yogurt containers like in the Thames River in England that are from the 70s, and they're just totally intact. So sorry, and the power of adding the brand audit to any cleanup you do is that you can then turn around with that data and those tools and engage in a very factual, data-driven conversation with these companies. And that is what is so useful about it.
Okay, everybody give us one action item that we individually can do right now to help bring an end to plastic pollution, and how can we build that toward a mass impact? Let me start with Dianna.
One action, woo, I think of multiple actions every day. Let's see. One action that we can all do, I would say support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act and encourage other family members and friends in other states to make sure that their representatives are also signing on in support of that act. I think that is one of the top things that we can do. But for a personal thing that you can do, just pick one thing in your life if you're not doing this already. Maybe it's invest in a reusable cup, stainless steel, or just bring a mug that you love that's ceramic from home. And just keep it with you, take it in your car, take it out when you go out for coffee, and just begin to normalize and rehabituate yourself to use a reusable cup.
Chris, you're next.
Along Dianna, I would suggest that, we reduce the amount of consumption that we are inherently I grew up in. I mean, we overbuy, we waste a lot. And this kind of goes back to for me, a little bit more the organics side of things, but we buy way more food than we ever will eat. And we need to get in the habit of buying what we need and not what we want.
All right, Paige, you get to take the last on this one.
Honored. Honestly, more of the same. I mean, I think stay curious and be loud. People change when they hear other people are changing. Businesses change when they know their consumers want change. Governments change when everyone's telling them they need to change and change quicker. So yeah, stay curious, speak up.
Well, this has been a delightful evening with all of you guys, even though it's a serious topic and sometimes seems insurmountable, but we have to just keep pushing ahead. Gina, I'm turning it back to you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Chris, maybe we should do an audit. We had tried to do an event about like this a while ago, a trash audit as one of our events in the city.
I agree. That was kind of an interesting little thing there. I mean, that's, we also have, illegal dumps and stuff, and maybe we can do a little bit more of that. I know, where we used to look for information in the illegal dumps, addresses and mail and things like, so we could find out who actually dumped it there. But we can do it the other way as well, where let's find out what we're picking up. What kind of mattresses are we picking up? Are we picking up more Serta than Sealy? Are we, that would probably be a pretty good little interesting tidbit.
Become a plastic pollution detective.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to all of you for participating in this. This has been amazing. I wish we could continue talking because there was a lot more questions and you guys have a lot more to say, but we're already almost a half hour past what I said the end time would be. But thank you so much for participating. So the last thing we want our participants to do is fill out our survey. It has all the action items in there, and we want you to commit to doing something. You probably learned a lot watching the film and listening to the panel, but learning isn't enough. So we need you to take action. So all the things that Dianna was talking about, the plastic free, contacting your congressperson and joining the movement and learning more about what they do will be in that survey. So make a commitment, and we'll have the panelists information there. You can contact them if you want to ask any further questions. Brenda is putting the link in right now to the chat if you want to fill out the survey right now, or you can fill it out when I send you the follow-up email, and it'll be on our website as well. And remember, if you fill out the survey, you're entered into our prize drawing where you can win a zero waste kit, which has a compost pail, bamboo utensils, a stainless steel straw, a stasher bag, so you're not using Ziploc bags. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us, all the attendees. Sorry for the issue with the film, and thank you, panelists, for a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. You're muted.
Oh, sorry, now I'm unmuted. Thank you. No, it's golden opportunity. The film killed me tonight. It just killed me. I didn't even want to get into one. There were more questions, as you know, but you can't get to all of them. But to talk about the environmental impact, it was obvious in the film how much the other countries in this world are suffering from our consumption.
Same thing with climate change and everything. Yeah.
Of course. Anyway, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, I don't know how to make it so that we get more questions. I think, I always forget how involved the panelists get when they're answering.
Yeah.
So I sit here thinking, okay, we got to get, but I felt like everyone had a good opportunity to answer questions and stuff. So it was good. Thank you so much. We'll think of you for our next film, which is probably going to be about drought in February.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
River, I haven't watched it yet, but Rivers, and maybe our film that we do in February.
Wow.
Thank you, Brenda, for all your tech support and your help.
Yay, thank you.
And I'm not
Brenda.
going to do a film again where they won't give us the film and we have to do a link and password. That was just a nightmare.
Yeah, sorry to all the attendees that are still on here, by the way. Like, if you all were able to make it to the movie and watch it, thank you so much for sticking with us.
Yeah, we really don't want it to be hard. We want it to be easy, and it was that was a tough one.
Yeah.
So
The really long password too just didn't help either. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and have a wonderful rest of the week, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Appreciate
Bye.
this opportunity. Be well.
Always my pleasure. Bye.
Bye.